Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions concerning this watch. Omega offers many accessory straps with its iconic Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch, some of which are included as standard equipment when you buy the watch. It has a rather elaborate boxed set with alternate straps. And today we're going to talk about a NATO style factory strap that changes the look of the watch. I've reviewed this model before, but given it a different look and a more purposeful, workmanlike aesthetic, it also wears a little bit different. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to describe how it changes the fit and the measurements of the watch. So in stainless steel, previous generation Moonwatch, this is the 1861 caliber, but 42 millimeters in diameter in stainless steel. If you were to measure it, you could find that it's got two different thicknesses. With the strap, 17 millimeters thick. If you were to measure it just case to the top of the crystal, case back to the top, that would be 14.5 millimeters. It's 48 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip, and then there's a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Now, this is not the purest of NATO experiences because it uses a perforated strap with a conventional pin buckle, so you don't have to learn how to use a gooseneck closure, and you don't have to accept some of the compromises in terms of packaging and volume and encumbrance that come with those. So this works a little bit more like a normal strap while still giving you the NATO aesthetic. It looks tactical, but most importantly, it gives you a lot of extra length if you want to wear this over some sort of a suit, and the implication is that it would be used over some sort of a space suit. So throwing it on the wrist, by the way, there's also a Velcro strap that allows you to wear it over a suit. Like I said, there's a lot of factory accessories for this watch. It's an interesting look. If you want something a little bit more tactical or a little bit more NASA-oriented or a bit more rugged, utilitarian, and outlaw, this is definitely the way to do it. These can be dressed up on leather. On black alligator, they get quite formal, whereas here it's a bit more purposeful. The watch wears fine. I will say it is bigger on this strap as it swells out further to either side. I don't necessarily think this changes the wrist fit since the strap is so flexible and there are so many degrees of adjustment in this strap, but it definitely takes up more space. So you decide whether that trade-off is worthwhile, particularly the extra width visually across the wrist and the extra thickness and the height when it's on the wrist. So anyway, that's your down the barrel. You can see it may not sit perfectly flat, but it'll come pretty close. The hardware is high quality, and as you can see, Omega actually brands the hardware right here. Case is familiar. Lyre style lugs. We have the outward bevel, the inward bevel. The outward bevel expands, contracts, it's polished, it runs the length of the case. The underside of the bezel has been polished. We have this little shear guard profile for chronograph pushers and crown, push down crown, 50-meter water resistance. We have an anodized aluminum bezel insert, a tachymetric scale that can be used with the chronograph seconds hand to gauge speed. Matte black dial, white on black print. Let's do a quick loom shot. Well loomed, including the chronograph seconds hand. And then, of course, NASA's preference was for thermoplastic. They call it Hessalite at Omega. I call it plexiglass, basically the same thing. Thermoplastics are plastics that can be shaped when they're sufficiently warm and, if necessary, heated up and reshaped. So this creates that lovely off-axis distortion that only a thermoplastic really can. But again, its purpose is to avoid shattered sapphire crystal in a zero-gravity environment. That's why sapphire crystal is harder to scratch, whereas this is easier to scratch. But sapphire crystal is also easier to shatter, whereas this is very, very difficult to shatter. And of course, in a zero-gravity environment, you don't want tiny sand-like flakes of shattered sapphire going into people's eyes and lungs. So Hessalite it is for the astronauts. Taking a quick look, you can always see one of the characteristics of these Hessalite Omega factory crystals is that there's a tiny Omega logo over the hands, which are all white varnished. Dished chronograph registers and running seconds. We'll do our best now to take a look through the back and see what's going on the case back. This is not a sapphire sandwich, so all you can really see is that it notes this is the first watch worn on the moon. And then there's the hippocampus, or the seahorse, to remind you that the first Speedmaster in 1957 technically debuted as part of the water-resistant Seamaster family. Now, of course, we know that only column wheel Speedmasters, including early Speedmaster professionals, actually walked on the moon. This is the veteran of many, many, many spaceflight missions, but the cam-based chronograph never actually went to the moon. So this is based on the Lemania 1873 rather than the older column wheel Lemania 2310. The 1873, though, has been turned into Omega 1861. So manual wind, 48-hour power reserve, 3 hertz beat rate, 18 joules. You have a cam lateral clutch chronograph arrangement. And while perhaps prior to 2000, these didn't quite have the crispness of the old 321s, I can tell you that the industrial might of Omega and Lamagna is now such that this pusher feel is now indistinct from a very good column wheel. Like, there are definitely some column wheels that don't even feel this good, and I would say only your Rolex 4130s, Elanka Datagraphs, Zenith Caliber 400s really have a more positive pusher feel than this. The watch does not have hacking, but that's an age-old feature of these 1861 calibers. If you love this watch, there is a lot to love. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916 Company for purchase and pricing details.